Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the We Can Do This podcast, Kiss the Ground's weekly conversation about how we can participate in the healing of our world and ourselves as we are one and the same. My name is Rylan Engelhart, and I am honored to be your host. I am thrilled to have our amazing guest, Doniga Markegard, who really is, I haven't gotten the privilege of getting that much quality time with her knowing, but she's actually been the star or one of the stars of the Kiss the Ground feature-length film. And so I've been seeing her face and her voice and her philosophy coming through the many cuts of that film as we've been developing it over the last 7 years. So I'm really excited about today's conversation. And it's also especially poignant because I'm just starting a family, and I'm also just coming June 1st, I'm going to be moving to a farm in Fillmore to start working on land and regenerating land and participating at a much more intimate, deep level with the ecological systems. And you've obviously jumped in and been doing this for some time. So I'm excited for my own learnings, today's conversation. And really the theme of May with this podcast has been honoring mothers. And so I just want to start by, I know you're a mother of four, and I just want to honor you for, just the sacrifice, the love, the service, and the care of being a mother, and that we all attribute our lives and owe our lives to mothers. So thank you for being an amazing mother. And the theme today, or the topic today, is raising a regenerative family, and all the kind of nuances and the ideas around that. And I just want to give a little bit more of a kind of a formal introduction of Doniga, and just say Doniga is a wildlife tracker, regenerative rancher, and speaker. She's an author of a book, Dawn Again, right here, and also Finding Myself in the Wild. And she came through a path of permaculture, outdoor adventure that led her to falling in love and becoming a regenerative rancher. And now she's a speaker, speaks at conferences such as Pioneers, Food Inspiration Trend Summit, the Grass-Fed Exchange, and she is a certified holistic she's an educator for Holistic Management International, and also works with companies such as Patagonia, Google, and has been featured in Fast Company, Green Biz, and the San Francisco Examiner. Long intro. Thank you. Welcome, Doniga. Really a pleasure to be with you. How are you? How are you today? How are you feeling this morning?
Oh gosh, I'm feeling good. I was up early, and we are now, this is sort of like, we plan out our weeks, and this week was chicken week. So we've got chickens this morning that now have fledged. They have their adult feathers, so they're ready to be out from the brooder, out onto pasture in the grass. So we were all moving them out, woke up the kids early to help me move them out of their brooder, out into the pasture. So I always love seeing them for the first time, see grass and light, and let them be free and peck around. And then tomorrow morning we get a new batch of chickens that go in the brooder, and then we have 9-week-old chickens out at pasture that we will catch and bring to harvest tomorrow as well. So it's been a full morning already, moving cows and feeding everybody, doing the chores, getting the kids going on their projects and homeschooling. And so now I'm ready to have some adult conversation.
Amazing. That was actually my first conversation was what did morning chores look like for a mom and a regenerative rancher? But you so you guys are managing cattle as the primary work of your ranch, but you also have other livestock such as chickens and pigs, or what other livestock are you managing on your ranch?
Yeah, so we steward 10,000 acres of coastal rangeland in between, north and south of the San Francisco Bay, all along the coast. And primarily, we raise cattle, a heritage breed called the Belted Galloway. And we also, on our home ranch and a few other smaller farms, we raise pasture-raised chickens, forest-raised pork, and grass-fed lamb. Our lamb are doing the work on an organic farm right now, grazing the cover crop and fertilizing the fields, and assisting in rebuilding that soil. So it's May, and we're in the peak of just animals moving. Most of the cattle that have their calves in the spring have already had their calves. So we've got a lot of babies on the ground, some big sows I was just looking at this morning that we need to bring in from the pasture and give them their own little farrowing area so that they can have their babies in the privacy of their own home. And so it's just, business as usual in nature and on the ranch. Things are moving rapidly.
So I'd love to just back up a little bit and really, because you're managing 10,000 acres of land. It sounds I think probably to most people maybe interested in I think we were just talking briefly before we went live, and just that within this pandemic and shelter in place, people being at home, and I was sharing that in that article that I wrote, really that there's an opportunity for retrospection that may not otherwise come until our deathbed. Like we're having a great pause and a great opportunity to see, are the jobs, are the lives that we were living before really the lives that we want to come back to and that we want to continue to do? And I'm sure there's many people that are saying yes, absolutely. And I think there's probably many that are saying maybe not so much. So I'd love to just understand for you how kind of what your aha moment was around Kiss the Ground is really an organization about inspiring participation in global regeneration, starting with soil. I just love to understand where in your life were you really touched by this potential of how humans can provide and set up and support a permanent agriculture where life is thriving and humans are being fed and the ecology is healthy. I'd love to just know, because for me it was an aha moment, and some people maybe it was just a slow build, but I'm just curious if there was a moment where you really just got regeneration at a deep level.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that it's taking a pandemic for people to become familiar with that word regeneration and regenerative that has really been around for a long time, I think since the 80s. However, I was sort of surprised and also celebrating that, I had an interview with NBC the other day through FaceTime, and they actually used the term as my caption of regenerative rancher. And for most people, that would be so foreign. Right. What is regenerative? So I'm hoping that the one thing that comes out of that interview is that people will go and look up the term regenerative,
Yes.
because ranching and farming has not been associated with that. So I think your question was sort of two parts. So you want to know when was my sort of aha moment,
Mm-hmm.
and then also talking about this great pause that we're in, where we have the opportunity to immerse in the essentials.
Mm.
And I think so many people in our modern day don't understand that there's things that are essential, that are very much meaningful. We can take back some of those essential activities, and we don't need to outsource those. And by taking those essential activities back, by not having that farmer growing all of our food, we can take that back and grow some of that food ourselves. By not having the housekeeper come and do our laundry, we can do that ourselves, and we can take joy. We can take joy schooling our children, teaching our children values. We can take some of that back. And it's hard. I'm the first one to admit that it's tough. We're no stranger to homeschooling. However, we've been able to have our kids in different activities, and have groups of kids and mentors. And so having them all back at the house has been such a gift, but also a challenge to try to navigate their own interests and their own passions and keep them engaged, and not just put them to work on the ranch, which we've got plenty of that to do. So let's see, going back to the first question, when did I really get the regeneration? Well, my background is in wildlife tracking, and I went to a school where I was mentored in many indigenous ways. I was adopted by a Lakota holy man and learned ceremony, and really learned that my place is rooted in nature, and my vision and my path and the sort of answers to my questions are rooted in the earth. And I can always look toward the earth, and I can learn to live in harmony, with my natural surroundings. And I did. As a youth, I really internalized that pace of nature, and got to immerse in such a deep way that so many kids don't have access to. And I was just even telling my kids yesterday that, when I was, because they all wanted to come in the house, and I said, no, just stay outside, because I had to get some computer work done. I said, just go outside. When I was your age, we'd have forts, we'd have trails, we had all these little areas outside, and we never wanted to be inside. We only wanted to be inside when mom called us in for dinner, and oftentimes we were out past dark. So I know not every kid has that incredible opportunity, but then once they realize, okay, I'm not going inside, I'm stuck out here, then they start to explore. They go down to the lower barn and they find bamboo to make spears, and play different games and discover things that are right in their yard. So I think when I really realized that we are integral to life, that the earth and humans, there's a possibility that we can be mutually beneficial, that we can actually tend to the wild, and we can produce more life than the life that we take if we simply learn from nature, observe, and mimic her miracles. And that's something that that isn't, that can't be taught in books. It can't be taught in schools. It really needs to be internalized. And I think that one of the reasons that my husband and I just immediately were magnetized to each other is because we both had that really deep understanding of the way nature functions. And his side of it was through managing large herds of cattle and seeing, and his heart really was with those cows. That are those cattle the healthiest they can be? Are they producing the most milk for their calves? Are they eating the best grass? And in order to take care of his livestock, he in turn had to take care of the land and to take care of the grasses. So he had a real need to observe nature and observe the way the grasses grow and the ecosystem functions. And for me, I put myself out there to survive, to test my skills, because I was learning how to start a fire by friction, collecting wild edibles. So I just put myself out there, walked out with the clothes on my back and a knife in my pocket. And I said, okay, I'm surrendering to Mother Earth. And can I go
At what age in your life?
This was like 15, 16 years old. And I was studying at the Wilderness Awareness School with John Young, and then later on with Tom Brown and other trackers and survivalists. And so learning all of these skills, and then I was with this group of teenagers, and a lot of these stories are in my books. And we were testing each other. We were seeing who could light a fire without matches in the pouring down rain, and who could build a debris hut and stay in a shelter and stay warm in the middle of winter in Western Washington. So it was really during that time that I saw how destructive humans have been, and that surviving it used to be thriving, and now it's going out into these forested areas where the resources are depleted, where the salmon no longer run, where the deer are sick because they are eating toxic yard waste, and where you're basically holding on just to the last threads of richness in the ecosystem. And that's when I realized that it's up to us. It's up to us to take our place, because nature is resilient. Nature will come back. It's up to us to understand how we fit in to stewarding the land, to tending to the wild. And so that's when I discovered permaculture and holistic management, and then finally made the big leap, which I feel like is you're in that transition right now of, okay, I'm going to produce food, and I'm going to produce food for thousands of families, and I'm going to do it in a way that builds soil and regenerates the wildlife that I had come to consider as my relatives and as my co-creators.
Beautiful. Thank you. Wow. So the track, just a little bit, because you speak a little bit about tracking, but just tell us, just to the audience, what is tracking? How could we all understand the essence of tracking?
Yeah. So tracking is the oldest science known to humans. It's also, the first letters were bird tracks. It's something that our primitive brains are designed for. They're designed for assessing an area, picking up different clues, being in the present moment, making sure a predator isn't going to pounce on you, and also tracking the past and projecting yourself out into the future. So it's a way to sort of expand your awareness, expand your brain, and really tune into that primitive brain. And it's something that is inherent in all of us. And when you look back to the folks that have really founded so much of this regenerative philosophy, like Bill Mollison and like Alan Savory, you track their understanding back to indigenous knowledge, and you track it back to tracking. Alan Savory was an expert wildlife tracker, and if you ever want to talk to him about something that really lights him up, it's tracking. And so I think that's where we start to understand how everything fits together, that there is nothing separate, that an animal moves through nature, and say you're tracking a predator, everything is very intentional, and the predator is moving, and you're tracking that movement, and then there's a ripple that goes out. The birds are communicating that predator moving through the forest. The predator is then moving the prey species, and the prey species are behaving differently, which in turn moves the plants. And that in turn moves the soil. As we know, that when plants are really moving and flourishing and growing and there's diversity, then there's more diversity in the soil, and more carbon is stored in the soil. So, and that's not something that can happen without an ecologically intact ecosystem, or else humans mimicking an ecologically intact ecosystem, and having all of those elements in place and all of those relationships in place. So that's how we go about our ranch. It's very difficult for us to plan. We make a plan, but then 100%, 110%, it's going to change on a daily basis, because we're really out there, and we're observing, and we're interacting with so much life. And it really only shows up when a scientist comes and studies the soil and says, oh, what are you doing? Because the land that you're stewarding is sequestering immense amounts of carbon at a really, really impressive rate, but your neighbor's land is emitting carbon. And the other neighbor that doesn't have cattle is also emitting carbon. So what are you doing? And I said, we're just listening. We're just observing, and we're listening. We're observing the livestock, we're observing the land, and we're taking action to what we're hearing.
Talk to me about, I know I've read and somewhat understood, the principles that were well articulated in the book, Braiding Sweetgrass, and this idea of the honorable harvest, and reciprocity. I think mostly we can't get our heads around, if we're taking something from the earth and we're killing it per se, that how can we find honor, and how can we find reverence in that process, and how can we take from the land, but actually take from the land in a way where we know that more will be given and more is actually being generated through our participation.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question, and I think that's up to every single individual to figure out for themselves. You know, I'm not going to tell you, Ryland, how you should be interacting with life and death. However, I know for us, for our family, and how we raise our children, is that we want them to be, we don't want them to be separate from that. We want them to witness what is involved with living, and part of that is death. And again, I learned this from the wolves, and I learned when I tracked packs of wolves, and I saw the ecosystem where the large herds of elk were being moved by the wolves, and then the visceral image of a dead bull elk partially submerged in the water. You just you internalize that. And some people might say, oh, that's cruel, or oh, I can't look at that, I can't see that. But it's life, that death is bringing so much life. It's like the ultimate sacrifice of the herd. So if we look at ourselves as we're a herd, and how are we going to move, and how are we going to cause the just the right amount of disturbance to produce more life, and not cause too much disturbance to destroy life. I think that's how we each need to go about it, is learning directly from nature. How does nature do things? And how does, when the wolf takes down an elk that might be older or weak, how does that increase the health of the overall herd and the health of the ecosystem? So I think that's, you know, that question is up for everyone to learn. Some people aren't going to bring their kids right to the source like we are. But they'll continue to just purchase things off the shelf of a grocery store, whether it's plant or animal. And but I would encourage everyone to go to the source, because everything you purchase is creating some sort of death. And when you choose regenerative beef, there is death. However, there's so much life that is produced in the wake of that death. When you're choosing industrial raised meat or industrial raised produce, corn and soy, the death is massive. It's a perpetual cycle of death. And the massive monocrops of corn and soy, just imagine what that grassland habitat was once like, and how diverse that was, and how that was once an ecologically intact ecosystem. And you really can't have that those types of ecosystems when you're growing one crop and you're tilling the soil and you're producing food on that industrial scale.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for that. Obviously, I don't know if you know this, but as you know, we as a family, you know, we have a family farm called Be Love Farm, and we've had a series of vegetarian restaurants for 15 years. And we, you know, we have some animals on our farm, and me and my father went through the process of harvesting or sacrificing or two cows a few years ago, and it became a very big there was a lot of a huge amount of anger and disappointment. And so yeah, it's definitely been something that we as a family have looked deep at in the face of really recognizing how if we're going to participate in the food system, we can do it, with a deep, intimacy and actually looking at the truth of how things are and participate in that. Or it's easier to stay kind of with the shutters over our eyes and not really understand the, as you described, the monoculture of death and what feels maybe like less harmful, but just is an uninvestigated less harmful. There's a beautiful Wendell Berry quote that's always kind of just stood right in the center of this conversation, which is, to live, we must daily break the body and shed the blood of creation. When we do it knowingly, lovingly, skillfully, reverently, it is a sacrament. When we do it ignorantly, greedily, clumsily, destructively, it is a desecration. And
well, that gave me chills.
Yeah, it's he was right on. But yeah, just back to this conversation, and how have your children kind of perceived and assimilated and made sense of life and death on the farm, and have any of them been like, I want to be a vegetarian, or they're like so yeah, I'm just curious how they've perceived that in their developing minds, as again, this conversation about teaching and sharing the principles of regeneration with family, and doing that as a family, that I feel like you've really been such a leader, and you really just dove in headfirst in. I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I think the way we parent is more, we want our kids to discover themselves and discover life around them, and come to their own ideas about life. And I think that so I was mentioning before this talk that I had a big transition in my life when my kids were little, like what you're going through now. And it's an opportunity right now as well for people to look at their own lives. Maybe not altogether quit their day jobs, but maybe pursue a very deep felt passion or curiosity, where they have touched something inside them, where they can feel really alive and have this creative force running through them. And so when my kids were little, I was doing, because you're very homebound when you're pregnant. And so I was picking up work, doing some consulting, and ended up being a lot of office work, and our ranch was not supporting our family. So my husband and I both had off-farm jobs. And so then I got really excited when I met Joel Salatin and started reading his books, and realized, oh gosh, we can do more than just, we were already raising and selling shares of grass-fed beef and grass-fed lamb. And I was thinking, okay, so as a parent, what we can do the best is just model, because if you tell your kids to do something, that only goes so far. You just have to model the values and hope that they pick that up over something else. So my husband and I realized that we needed to just figure out, we couldn't one of us couldn't stop working and just go play in the woods with the kids all the time. We both had to keep working. So what were some things that we could do with little kids where we were modeling good work ethics, and they could just sort of, you know, be around in the periphery and watch the parents and maybe help a little bit here and there. And so that's when we diversified the ranch to include chickens and to include pigs. We did laying hens with the egg mobile, and we started raising pullets to sell as backyard laying hens. And, you know, I really went all in and was saying, okay, I'm gonna make a living doing this. And of course, those first few years probably had a huge loss because farming is expensive, and you need the right type of infrastructure, the right type of knowledge, and, you know, there's a lot to figure out. And a lot of times if you know, I joke around and I say, well, if my husband and I had any clue about business, we probably wouldn't have started, you know, doing all of this diversified agriculture. But we went into it with heart, and we went into it with lifestyle. And in the end, you know, we've built a very solid foundation. And, you know, we might have done things a lot differently if we were hung up looking on spreadsheets and making sure everything, you know, penciled out. But we don't regret those, you know, all the hard work that has got us to this point. And we're at the point now where, you know, we still have the same folks that are sourcing from us, that were sourcing from us 15 years ago, and so much more that are just really seeing that this is the way of the future, to have that relationship with the farm. And I think this is a huge turning point for regenerative agriculture. And it's unfortunate that it took so many deaths to really bring industrial meat production, sort of take down the you know, the veils and uncover the, you know, the conditions of injustice, and for people to realize that there's a different way to do things, and we can model that for our children. And so yeah, it was, you know, when I had, you know, babies strapped to my front and toddlers running around, I was out there moving chicken shelters and collecting eggs. And so it was, you know, it was great. And it was a lot of hard work, and I was really tired at the end of the day, but I sort of used my Grammy as my biggest role model, and she grew up on a homestead, and she was the healthiest, most hard-working woman with incredible ethics, and you know, very healthy, and grew up on raw milk, and that's what I wanted my kids to do as well.
And so would you say that for the most part, your kids really appreciate and see the work that you're doing, and they get it at a level that they can comprehend at this age? And what are the ages of your children?
Well, now my youngest is 10, so 10 all the way. I have 10, 11, 13, and 18. And
oh, wow, you have an 18-year-old. You have a young man or young woman? Young woman,
yeah.
Young woman.
And
wow, amazing.
They're all so integral. You know, I don't really realize sometimes what they, you know, what they pick up on. But the other day, my 11-year-old was on a Zoom call with her science teacher, and he was asking about, you know, he wanted to pick up some meat. And she was giving him this whole like marketing pitch, and oh yeah, you just got to go on our website and you can choose it from here. It's like, how did you know all that? Like, what to tell people, how to order their meat and where to pick it up. And she was just spot on with every single step. And, oh, you can get this, you can get that. Well, we won't have our chickens ready for a couple weeks because they're still out at pasture. And it's like, I never told her any of that. She just hears me talking to customers all day long. And she just picks this up and she can just spew it out. So yeah, they're all just really amazing and very integral to the ranch now, and it's incredibly valuable. I mean, you couldn't train somebody to do something that they were just grew up with and born to do. So
Beautiful. You spoke about this a little bit, but if there's kind of people aspiring to walk the path that you've walked down, what have been the pitfalls, and what would you say? What would you say some high level guidance would be for those inspired to walk down the path of heading back to the land and working to regenerate it?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's no better time than right now, is the first thing, because what I'm seeing and what everyone in our network of regenerative farmers and ranchers is seeing is a big, I'm not going to call it a burden, but we're having so much interest in our product that it's more than we can take on. So we need more people growing food and raising animals in an ethical way that's regenerating land, because we're not going to be the Tysons of the world. Nature doesn't function that way. We need more family ranches and farms in every region. We don't need multinational corporations. We need people in their own neighborhoods, in urban areas, growing urban gardens. We need everyone to start to take more responsibility and lighten the load off those of us that are experiencing a huge amount of demand. And we need to keep that going. We need to show people, hey, it's okay that industrial agriculture falls to the ground. We need to rise up and meet the challenge and say, no, we're not going to have a shortage of food. We're going to have an abundance of nutrient-dense food where the animals are raised ethically, and we're going to do it in a way that is regenerative and is regional, and that there can be that relationship, there can be that reciprocity. So it's a time right now to if you don't know a regenerative farmer or rancher, go and meet one. And if you can't meet one, then become one. And it really is that time right now. This whole movement of victory gardens and all the hatcheries are sold out of baby chicks for backyard laying hens. It's sort of like, hey, let's keep it going. We want those those heirloom seed businesses to continue to get so much business that they then expand and more businesses start up, because they see that there's this demand. As a regenerative rancher, we've been waiting for this moment. We've been waiting for this moment for consumers to wake up and say, hey, the way we've been doing things is not resilient. And the way that agriculture has been, and the way that the climate has reacted to human caused pollution is not how we want to live our lives. And so it wasn't massive fires and environmental catastrophes that did it. It was coronavirus. It was massive people dying because of some small microbe that really made people question what can we do? What can we do to go back to essentials and to figure out what that means for each one of us, what that means for our families, and how we can reimagine life.
Beautiful. Because, you know, we, in this podcast, I always like to kind of make the connection between, you know, as we heal ourselves, as we heal our wounds, as we heal our, you know, our own lives and our own minds and our own hearts, that we become kinder, more loving, compassionate, or even the other side of it, as we're working with the land and seeing land heal, we start to experience healing within our own lives. And I'm just curious if there's anything that you can specifically point to within your journey of really where you saw in your relationship to land healing, you saw a personal healing that started to emerge. Yeah, if you in your own personal life have noticed a connection between when we're either inspired to do one because of the other, or yeah, how you see those things are connected.
Yeah, you know, in my books, I wrote them because in order to share my story so that others could relate to that story. And because so many people's story is similar. We get exposed to something in our youth, and that might be an experience of rapture or adrenaline, or something where we feel that we've become very close to a divine spirit. And then we begin to question and to be curious about life and our place in life. And we also uncover maybe the traumas that we have been through. And oftentimes people get stuck there, and they get stuck in that grief, whether it be grief for the loss of habitat, or the loss of, you know, species. And oftentimes anger comes up, and different emotions. And and my new book, Wolf Girl, is specifically for the youth activist that, you know, so much of what I saw was a lot of this grief inside of them, that there's anger because they feel like the older generation has cheated them out, and they're going to stand up and make a change. So however, if we come from a place of anger and grief from trauma, then we're never gonna really heal inside to be able to do the work that we need to do.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's yeah. Yeah, it really brings me back to the vision of why kiss the ground? That the name Kiss the Ground is this expression of love and humility and reverence for the great mystery of life, and that surrendering my will, my mind, my understanding, letting that go, and allowing in the surrender to feel the benevolence and the beauty of the universe. And then from that beauty and that benevolence, being able to stand back up after kissing the ground and taking right action, taking loving, kind, compassionate, courageous action towards something that we know is of the nature of that benevolence, that mystery, that love that we felt, and oftentimes feeling that after being on our knees, grieving the loss of something, grieving the resistance to something, the anger because of something, and allowing us to rise back up and step into that we can do this, that after 1,000 no's there is a yes, and upon that yes our life depends. And that nature, the world, is fundamentally healing, regenerative, self-correcting, balancing. And the nature of human beings is love at the center. When all the other things are burned away, there is, I have certainty and faith in that's where that's what is at the core and the center of all human beings. So thank you for sharing that. We're coming down. I have one kind of final question, which I ask all the guests, which speaks to the name of the podcast, and that really is, we can do this. How? And I know you've been speaking about it, but just in another expression, I really believe that we can heal and regenerate this precious, beautiful earth. And I know that again, the Kiss the Ground film, I cry, maybe every other time that I watch it, and it's usually around you at the end, sharing about, about what we do today, what choice we make today, for our children tomorrow, and so I just would love just the. How can we do this, Doniga? We I know we can. How can we do it?
Yeah. Well, I've been thinking a lot about this group that I'm part of called Women in Ranching, and it's a group of different women across the country that gather and really have speak from our hearts in circle, and women that are sometimes very isolated in large rural areas and really stewards of the earth. And I keep being reminded of our last gathering right before the pandemic and really got going, and there was women that were just saying, everybody's telling me that this isn't going to work, and the woman that was hosting it, Sally Calhoun, says, don't listen to those people. You don't listen to people that say that it's not gonna work. Just do it anyways. And so then looking back at that, these women, of course, are just thriving, and with so much demand for good, clean meat, that it's sort of like, okay, I'm going to take that advice. Don't just listen to people that say that's never going to work, because you're going to hear that the rest of your lives.
Yes.
That,
Yes.
that your ideas aren't going to work. Oh, and you're going to get people that say, oh, I've tried that before. No, that doesn't work. So just, it's almost like, you gotta really stand up for what you believe in, and it's okay to do things for the first time, and it's okay to go into the unknown, because it's within that unknown that we are really going to find that creativity flowing through us, and to break through barriers and to get past that hopelessness. And with everything that's going on, I'm sure there's so much hopelessness going on out there, and there's always something, there's always a glimmer of light in the darkness. And if we can really put our attention and our focus onto the children, and it's our time to step up, because we have cheated them out of a future where they can have clean air to breathe. And so this is our time to show the next generation that this next decade, we're going to make the changes to set them up for success. And we're not going to solve it all, but we're going to work on preserving the knowledge. So much of this is about preservation of indigenous knowledge, and it's holding on by a thread. And so if we can sit with elders, and we can sit with those wisdom keepers, and we can immerse in nature, that we can then start to bring that back and have the next generation take that even farther. And this pandemic has uncovered the things that really aren't working and really don't serve us. And how can we then take that and put that into action when we sort of all go back to business as usual?
Beautiful. Thank you. We're going to take a couple questions from the audience. First one is, what is the definition of a regenerative family? I made that up as the topic for the conversation. But yeah, what would you say is the definition of a regenerative family?
Oh gosh. Well, I think it's going to be different for everybody. However, for us, I've talked about it through this last hour of basically providing the environment for life to flourish, whether that's the life of the food that you're growing, or the life of the children that are surrounding you, and create those environments where they feel like they can explore their curiosities and they can discover things on their own. And also have them be a part of what you're doing. And so that's what's so great about growing food, is that it's so tangible. You can really grasp that as an incredible, so many times, in our culture, the average age of the farmer is in his 60s, and the next generation is not taking on the family farm. And so how can we shift that perception and say, oh yeah, I'm gonna go back to the farm. I'm gonna, follow in the footsteps and create even more life and food and feed people as like the ultimate career, right? I'm right across the hill from Silicon Valley, and yeah, I'm sure it's tempting looking at the salaries of the Facebooks and the Googles, but hey, what if there was another option for our graduating classes of you can go in the field of regenerative agriculture and look
Yeah,
at
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, you might not get the equal salary, but it'll be tenfold in lifestyle and health.
Mm. And last question, Donica, who is your mentor? You mentioned that I think you mentioned that you had one elder in your early in your life that really was instrumental in your awakening and the guidance of your life. Do you share who that is?
Yeah, his name was Gilbert Walking Bowl, and he's passed now, but certain of his teachings that I had permission to share, I have written in my books, and they're values that he really wanted to have out there to the world. And he saw this coming, as many Indigenous elders, visionaries saw this pandemic coming, and he actually got it to the point where he saw the color yellow. And I was in ceremony with him when he saw this vision, and he didn't know when it would happen, because human time is different than spirit time. But the virus is actually yellow. And so what he told me is, he said, Doniga, a time will come where people will die, and it's those who have learned to live like the wild animals that will survive. And that was something that stuck with me. And it's it's come up again and again during this time. It's like, okay, we need to learn from nature, we need to learn how the animals live, we need to learn to track, and we need to learn to observe. So yeah, he's my mentor. And now, I just try to glean from anyone I come across, really. So
Yeah, wow, that's beautiful. It makes me think of the Yvon Chouinard. I remember he gave a talk at Expo West a couple years ago, and his health advice was to go into the wildness of nature, and everywhere you go, be inoculating yourself with the microbiome of that wild world. So putting the leaves and all the immerse yourself in the biology of nature, and allow that to strengthen the biology of our human health, our biome. And
yeah,
so
we need that even more right now, with all the hand washing and sanitizers and bleach, and you just got to go wash your hands with good healthy dirt to build that back up.
Yes. Well, beautiful. Donica, thank you so much for your time today, for being an inspiration, for being, modeling in a beautiful, humble, and courageous way. It's a really beautiful thing. And for those that have been watching, thank you so much for your participation. Thank you for your questions. And, our little communication every week is just, if you appreciate the work of Kiss the Ground, we're a nonprofit, and we operate off of donations and grants. So, because of this pandemic and the financial challenges, we've made our membership available for as low as $1. You can support and participate and become a member of Kiss the Ground for just $1 a month. And we encourage and invite everybody to do that. So thank you so much. Next week, we have Lila Salazar, Lopez, the executive director from Amazon Watch, is going to be on. And we're excited to have a conversation with her. And then the following week, Marianne Williamson. We got all mothers on the month of May on the We Can Do This podcast. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We love and appreciate you. Doniga, I love and appreciate you. I look forward to seeing you and giving you a hug when we can do that. And we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.